Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Policy Watch. Big developments this week, some major decisions taken by the government. We will try and analyze the scenario for you. And for that, in the studio, we have this week Mr. KG Narendranath, Deputy Editor of the Financial Express. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Narendranath. Before Mr. Narendranath and I start chatting, let's get you the headlines. The government defers GAR till April 2016. Big boost to industry and investors alike. Markets cheer, Sensex crosses 20,000 mark. Cabinet decides to give oil marketing companies freedom to price diesel. Opposition slams the move. Economists welcome it. Government also hikes caps on number of LPG cylinders per household to 9. The Finance Minister meets his state counterparts, discusses host of issues, hopeful of rolling GST soon. Those were the headlines. Let's get you the details of the first story. The Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs raised the cap on supply of subsidized LPG cylinders to 9 bottles from 6 per year per household. It also authorized oil marketing companies to undertake periodical hikes in diesel prices till the 9 rupees 60 paisa per litre subsidy is completely wiped out. For now, government has allowed oil marketing companies to raise diesel prices by 50 paisa per litre per month. Bulk users, however, will be charged at market price. We filed a report. Take a look.
The government has decided to give oil marketing companies the freedom to make small corrections in diesel prices in line with increases in global crude oil prices. The cabinet, however, stopped short of deregulating the entire sector.
I am proceeding on the basis that the subsidy bill remains the same. When they will make the small corrections, how much I can't say. So I'm not factoring it. But they've been given the freedom to make small corrections.
The cabinet also raised the cap on subsidized LPG cylinders in a year per household to 9 from the current 6.
Approved the proposal to raise the cap from 6 cylinders to 9 cylinders. No change in prices. Diesel is concerned, the OMCs, that the marketing companies, have been authorized to make from price corrections from time to time.
But the decision to deregulate diesel prices has not gone down too well with opposition parties who argue that an increase in prices will automatically lead to inflation.
गैस और साथ ही साथ ऑयल के मूल्यों के निर्धारण के संबंध में एक प्राइसिंग पॉलिसी होनी चाहिए, लेकिन इस गवर्नमेंट की कोई प्राइसिंग पॉलिसी है ही नहीं. बेतहासा कीमतें, चाहे पेट्रोल हो, डीजल हो, कुकिंग गैस हो, बेतहासा कीमतें जब होता है तब ये गवर्नमेंट बढ़ा देती है.
You see, this decision taken by the central government to virtually deregulate the prices of diesel is going to impose very heavy burdens both on the common people and on the economy, and particularly our agrarian economy, which continues to remain in a state of distress.
Is a dangerous step government of India has taken affecting the livelihood of the common people, and it is going to create a situation when the inflation will be high and the livelihood of the people will be affected.
Diesel goes into the prices of all essential commodities. Whether it is food grains, whether it's vegetables, whether it is fruits, diesel becomes an important component where price escalation takes place. So diesel is something for the common man. You cannot crush the common man in the name of all kinds of theories.
बहुत ज़्यादा डीजल जो है वो यूज करता है किसान मशीनरी पर, वो आगे उसकी बुरी हालत है. अब सब जो अगर इस तरह कर देंगे, कंपनियों पे छोड़ देंगे, कंपनियों तो बढ़ाना ही है, उनका मतलब तो अपना फायदा है. उनका मतलब ये नहीं है कि देश के लिए कुछ करना है.
The market, however, reacted positively to the news as investors took this as a signal that the government is pushing ahead key reform measures it has been dithering on. The cabinet decision came on the note submitted by the Petroleum Ministry based on the recommendations of the Kelkar Committee, which had called for an end to the subsidy regime in the petroleum sector by 2015-2016. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had also recently said the country must gradually bring local fuel prices in line with global prices. OMCs currently lose 9 rupees per litre on the sale of diesel at subsidized rates. This amounts to an annual loss of 94,000 crore rupees. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
There you go. Narendranath, let me tell you this. Stealth deregulation is what the media is terming it, giving oil companies pricing freedom. But the government is saying that it is not deregulation at all. They're saying that no, this is the oil company's call, OMC's call. This had to happen. This was expected. Your first thoughts on the decision?
As Mr. Modi has been saying, price corrections which he is saying from time to time which OMCs have to make is done in a politically correct way. The government thinks that it is in a politically correct way. Whether that will be politically correct, time will tell. But the point is that they are not actually deregulating. They are giving freedom for the companies to raise prices from time to time, and the periodicity or the quantum of hikes have also not been specified in the directions given to the oil marketing companies. This, the experience with petrol.
Yeah.
June 2010, there was a revision, there was similar kind of deregulation prices of petrol. OMCs were not able to increase the prices in line with the global prices even thereafter. And at one point of time, the IOC chairman was saying that it is better the government try to regulate it again and give us the compensation rather than foregoing our right for compensation and then giving this so-called deregulation, which is actually not the deregulation. So government is aware of that fact. So it deliberately avoided the term deregulation. But the point here is that government is making some steps to cut the subsidies. There is a huge element of wasteful subsidy with diesel and other items like LPG and kerosene also. These are actually leakages. They don't actually reach the beneficiaries. A large part of it don't reach the beneficiaries.
Right.
So it is important for the government to correct its finances. The fiscal deficit is also already is a runaway.
Out of hand.
So expenditure control in other kinds of expenditure. This is the revenue expenditure. Subsidy belongs to, it's one component of the revenue expenditure. The capital expenditure side and certain other kind of items which are more amenable to administrative measures.
Right.
The government has already taken some measures.
So
especially after Chidambaram took over.
Yeah.
And it is already showing some results. So we are about to, he is trying to achieve the 5.3% fiscal deficit target, which is already announced.
We agree that this had to happen. The government really had no choice. They were bleeding subsidies. They were leakages, like you said. But some economists even say that this might even be too late. Would you agree with that?
I cannot say it is too little because it can be done only in a gradual and calibrated way. A sudden hike of 10 rupees per litre.
All hell would have broken loose.
The under recovery is around 10 rupees per litre. Yeah. If it would have created a Pandora's box and then political backlash would have been there and they would have to roll back the decision also.
Right.
I think in that sense what government is doing now in a very small amounts if they are able to do for some time. But as you know, the total subsidy on diesel accounts for around 60% of the total oil subsidy. It's around 1 lakh crore is the estimated diesel subsidy alone this year. So if you want to eliminate the entire diesel under recovery, it is not possible. So it may come down and settle at ₹6 per litre or so. That's what the government sources also indicate to us.
Right.
So it may not be a complete deregulation. Government may be doing it in a gradual way. It may not be every month also.
But it's a positive step
in the right direction. Step in
the right direction. As far as complete deregulation is concerned, I want to ask you this. Do you think that can happen anytime? First of all, that complete deregulation. And if that did, would you say that complete regulation is necessary at all? Would you be supporting it?
No, complete deregulation of diesel may not be a good idea because diesel goes into various industrial applications and industrial inputs. It's a major input for power sector. Some of the power plants run on it, cement and various other industries. For transportation, railways and road, both by railways and road, bulk buyers. Actually, a more important measure, as important a measure as this 50 paise increase in diesel or the permission given to oil marketing companies to raise prices of diesel is the deregulation of the bulk diesel market.
Right.
The bulk diesel account for around 20% of the total diesel consumption of the country. Railways, state road transport corporations, defense, various other entities, captive power plants, they are all buyers of bulk diesel. So there it is a total deregulation. There's a hefty hike of 9 rupees. Right. That is not being noticed as much as the price hike. Yeah. But that will alone give government around 13,000 crore savings on the under recoveries or 18% cut in subsidy on diesel over a period of 1 year.
So the government is taking steps. Perhaps that's not in the public discourse right now, but they are taking
But that measure can be a bit inflationary also because both the rail travel by rail and travel by road. Both will, the prices will increase.
Right. And there is some concern also about short-term inflation by raising diesel prices or deregulating diesel prices. We do expect it to actually, the inflation to go up in the short term as well.
there will be an impact on inflation over a period of several months. It may not be a sudden impact, but the bulk diesel price may have a stronger impact on inflation than the overall 50% increase in the retail sales.
One quick question on the LPG decision as well. Some people say there is a step backwards and it is a rollback and wasn't really necessary. It's a political decision. What are your views?
Actually, this subsidized price itself is quite high, and many of the lower middle class and the poor people may not be reaching that 6 per cylinder target per year. They may be using less than that. Some part of the lower middle class people may be using more than that, and for them it will be a marginal benefit. And what the government is trying to the outgo on the under recovery side from this account will be around 9,000 crore. So it's not a very small step in that sense.
Right. Right. On that note, sir, we'll take a small break and we'll come back with the second story of the week. Don't go anywhere. More with Mr. KG Narendranath on the other side of this break. Welcome back to Policy Watch. The Union government on Monday deferred the implementation of the controversial General Anti-Avoidance Rules or GARD by 2 years and built in safeguards to check against possible misuse by tax authorities. The biggest safeguard is that GARD will be invoked only in cases of deals where the main purpose is to obtain tax benefit. And even in such cases, tax department officials will be required to first issue show-cause notices containing reasons using the provisions incorporated into the law in the last budget. But the onus now will be on the assessees who receive the notice to prove that the tax arrangement is not impermissible. This comes as a big shot in the arm for industry and investors alike, especially foreign investors. Here are the details. Take a look.
This decision comes as a big shot in the arms of industry and investors alike, especially the foreign investors. For foreign investors, the biggest gain is the non-residents investing via FIIs don't have to worry. It will, however, apply to FIIs that take advantage of benefits under tax treaties that India has with countries such as Mauritius and Singapore. The biggest safeguard is that GARD will be involved only in case of deals where the main purpose is to obtain tax benefit. And even in such cases, tax department officials will be required to first issue show-cause notices containing reasons using the provisions incorporated into the law in the last budget. But the onus will be on the assessees who receive the notice to prove that the tax arrangement is not impermissible. Even though the announcement has already galvanized markets with the Sensex even crossing the psychologically significant 20,000 mark, tax experts have warned that the fine print needs to be looked at given the recommendations of the committee headed by Parthasarathi Show. Even the rupee seems to be on a much-awaited comeback. Tracking a sharp rise in local stocks, the rupee on Monday bounced back by 27 paisa to close at over 1 week high of 54.49 against the US dollar, ostensibly on the back of the GARD deferment.
Right, there you go. Important decision there as well. Kiji, thoughts first up. The France minister in his speech, in his address to the media person, he said that this would like the monkey off the back of foreign investors. It gives them some relief. And it also gives investment the much needed thrust it needs right now. What do you think?
It brings a certain element of certainty, even though many of the things still need to be clarified in the form of guidelines which is to be issued. But generally, it is true that for Mauritius-based investors, government is trying to ensure that only in cases where there is a real tax residency in Mauritius and real commercial presence, it's important that for investors to pool the resources and use to be stationed in a good jurisdiction, a favorable jurisdiction. That's okay. But as you were saying, tax mitigation is recognized, but tax avoidance is frowned upon. So this is a theory. So it is important that the tax, wherever the tax liability is there due to Indian authorities, has to be taken. At the same time, there should be certainty to the investors.
Right.
So they are trying to balance it a bit. Many of the Shom Committee recommendations, some of them were a little overboard.
Right.
Like
but they've taken most of the recommendations.
Most of the recommendations.
Yeah.
For example, Shom recommended abolition of capital gains tax. That may be too ambitious.
I was just coming to that, the short-term capital gains tax. There's nothing in it in the speech or the official notification on the short-term capital gains tax. Yes, the FM has said nothing on it. So does that really make GAR relief for now? Do you think that particular clause might be perhaps being saved for the budget speech, maybe a big bang announcement there?
I don't think there will be a total abolition of the capital gains tax. That is very unlikely to happen. But as you said, the procedural things, whatever certainty which is provided to the investors in the form of this new approving panel headed by a retired or serving High Court judge, and that approval panel's views will be binding on both the taxpayer and the authorities, the revenue authorities. So, and there is a provision for appeal only to the court now. There is no appellate authority. So, this will reduce the indiscriminate invocation of the GAR provisions. There were actually a lot of sweeping powers, undefined sweeping powers with the tax authorities. Those will be curtailed to a certain extent.
And that's what the investors want to see anyway. I want to look at the big picture here and concentrate on the effect it will have on the current account deficit, because that's why we really want foreign investment. We need to reduce the gap. This is getting out of hand. Of course, this is a big step towards that, but is it really enough? What else do we need in terms of quick policy decisions to reduce the gap in the deficit?
No, our tax rates are not that high internationally, if you see. The tax authorities in certain areas, like newer areas like transfer pricing, where the overall the situation, things are not going to settle, about to settle, it does not settle in India. So it's a incipient stage. So there the tax authorities are little aggressive, hyper aggressive. So that may be one worry for the foreign investors. Otherwise, if you see our corporate tax rate or dividend tax rate, they are not that high. So rather than the tax, any further concession on the tax front, the global investors will need a conducive policy regime in India, good governance, and certainty about approvals. Avoidance of long delays in approvals and all. So we should focus more on foreign direct investment rather than on FII. Of course, FII also we need to a certain extent, but we should try to attract foreign direct investment, especially greenfield investments in the country.
Exactly. So FDI is far better than FIIs. FIIs are fickle, it's volatile, it's hot money, and it's not really going to affect the CAD.
In the short-term perspective, because of the high current account deficit, we may need some capital flows to happen. We cannot, the capital flows, FII flows have been quite robust in the recent months. Private equity investments over the last 2 years have dropped, but FII flows have been okay. So that situation we have to continue, especially given that economy has slowed down. We need more foreign investment as well as domestic investment.
One more question on this. The moment this was announced, the GAR deferral was announced, markets seemed to rally and they seemed to cheer. It crossed the psychologically important 20,000 mark. That's not really an indication of the GAR announcement. I've been talking to experts and they say the market was going to rally anyway. What do you think?
Market was going to rally anyway, and it's also a knee-jerk reaction to a certain extent, because something positive comes out. There was something more negative which was apprehended. So the government is clarifying on this. At least to a certain extent, it's a dilution of those very cumbersome provisions which were there in the earlier draft. So to that extent, the market reacted. Market reactions, immediate reactions cannot be taken for granted.
Also, one more question on the rupee. It sort of gained after the GAR announcement. It's looking better right now. Do you think that has to do with the GAR announcement, or do you think it's also because the markets were going to rally anyway and the forex markets are looking better?
It's because of the general market, overall market
general sentiment as well.
Because some foreign direct investment, FI flows, as I said earlier, has been robust over the last few, especially after 2 weeks, it is particularly robust. So it's because of the general, on a comparative basis, India is becoming a more attractive destination.
So overall, good news for investors, both domestic and foreign investors. We'll take another small break, sir. We'll come back after the break. Our third story on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In a pre-budget consultation with finance ministers of states, Mr. P. Chidambaram stressed it was time to wrap up loose ends on GST, or the goods and services tax. He added even if states gave their consent just a few days before the budget, he would make GST a part of his budget speech, said an official who was present at the meeting. In November, the finance minister had formed 2 committees to resolve the differences between the centre and the states on GST and central sales tax, or CST. It is expected that the committees, which had missed the deadline of December 31st, will give their reports now on January the 21st. Do you see any consensus on the cards at all? The states are still making an issue of the fiscal autonomy of states. There seems to be no consensus on the cards. Chidambaram has said that he will include GST in his budget speech, even if a few days before they have consent from states. Do you think that's possible at all in the current scenario?
It may not be possible to announce the roadmap for GST in the current budget.
Yeah.
He can make some motherhood statements that we are for GST, it will be implemented very soon and all. Because as you remember, Pranab Mukherjee used to make such statements
all the time,
which have all proven unattainable. So further statements won't help. But the GST, there are certain disagreements between the centre and states on certain issues. That is about the threshold level where the tax would kick in, and about the GST council, the composition of the GST council, and the relative say of the centre and states on the council, and the need of the dispute settlement authority, whether that should be there or not, and the states' freedom to deviate from the tax rates quite a bit, or give some exemptions in certain cases, how far that deviation is possible. So these things are being discussed. It's also true that to a large extent this lack of consensus on GST is also because of political
reasons. That's pretty apparent also.
So the BJP obviously it thinks they are not in a mood to support the government to do this reform, which they think is their own original idea.
Right.
So that may be one reason.
Right.
So other than that, there is among the state finance ministers, especially the chief of the Empowered Committee chairman, Sushil Modi, he of course is willing to accommodate the interest of the centre also. Even at the same time, he wants to include this, as you said, the fiscal autonomy of the states. That's also a very important thing. Because if you see, the state's fiscal position is comparatively better now. It is not that states are fiscally more profligate and centre is more fiscally prudent.
Right.
So, and also it is important that the states on the ground level in implementing authority, it is more with the states. States know about the ground realities more than the centre.
As an unbiased observer, I mean, apart from the politics of it, do you see in the current draft of the GST, do you think the fiscal autonomy of states is threatened, or do you think it could be worked? What is the outlook?
I don't think the fiscal autonomy of the states is threatened. Perhaps the GST council can be modified a bit so that both
include more.
It can be more liberal to the states. I mean, states say should increase in the GST council, and they should have certain freedom to deviate from the rate or give some exemptions in certain cases. But it's also more important that GST, when it comes, is a true imperfect GST. Including all kinds of taxes in it, except the basic customs duty.
Right.
Most of the taxes, which is central and states levy, the indirect taxes, should be subsumed in GST.
So you're saying an
including petroleum taxes.
You're saying an imperfect GST or a hastily made up GST could be more harmful, in fact, than more helpful.
It cannot be more harmful, but if you want to attain the economic gains out of GST,
then
it should be a perfect GST. So even if it is being delayed by 1 year, it is better to focus more on the integrity of the GST model than discussing other things.
In the current context, and this is my last question to you, in the current context with the FIS going out of hand and the CAD, of course, also not in comfortable levels, outline for our viewers of Policy Watch, the importance of implementing a path-breaking tax reform like goods and services tax. What are we really hoping to achieve from the GST?
We are really, in the B2B transactions, the underlying principle of GST is that in B2B transactions, the tax will be applied only on the value added.
Right.
So that actually reduces the tax content in goods and services. So there are a large number of tax cascading effect of the taxes in the current regime. These will be streamlined, and effectively the prices can also come down. The industry can be more cost effective. The global competitiveness of the industry will increase. So GST in that sense, in a structured way, in a perfect way, which is being implemented, it will have huge economic gains.
Absolutely.
It's a very important tax reform.
Absolutely. It's path-breaking tax reform. On that note, sir, we'll end our show here, but I must thank you first, Mr. K.G. Narendranath, for coming on Policy Watch this week. That, of course, was the Deputy Editor of the Financial Express, giving his views on our top stories this week. Our first story this week was the Cabinet decides to give oil marketing companies freedom to price diesel. Of course, the opposition has really slammed the move, but it was needed at a small step positive step in the right direction. It remains to be seen how much guidance the government really gives the oil marketing companies as and when they do the hikes. Our second story this week on Policy Watch was the GAR deferment. Of course, huge news for investors, both domestic and foreign, especially FIIs. GAR has been deferred till 2016 April. This will give some sort of certainty to investors trying to invest in India. Of course, as we also discussed, the markets were already supposed to rally, but this also helps, and this creates an atmosphere of certainty, which will of course help in getting more capital inflows from outside, and perhaps in the short term helping us counter the CAD, which is of course getting out of hand. Our third story this week, of course, was Mr. P. Chidambaram, the finance minister, meeting his state counterparts to discuss many issues. Most important, of course, the GST. And like my guest today said, an imperfect GST is not what we're looking for. Take your time, but when the GST does roll out, it should be perfect, encompassing all issues and all concerns so that we get the maximum out of what we're actually hoping to achieve when we roll out the goods and services tax. That's all the time we have on Policy Watch this week. Athar Khan saying goodbye, good night, and thank you for watching.